This week is, of course, Parshas Teruma. I'm going to do Siddur tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. This week is Parshas Teruma. Parshas Teruma is v'asuli Mikdash v'shechanti b'seich. That means Hashem wants a house. You have a house, I have a house. Hashem wants a house. And of course, a house is private property. Private property means it isolates, it separates a person from everything outside of himself. Inside the walls of one's home, this is their space, they can be as they wish. And there's a separation between their own space and the environment. Kvayachal, Hashem wants a home. Inside that home, Hashem is free to express himself outside however he wishes. And there's a barrier between himself and the environment around himself. Now there's two ways of looking at the Beis HaMikdash, basically. One way is that it's a reaction to Chet HaEgel. And the other way is that it's immaterial to Chet HaEgel. If you say that the Beis HaMikdash is a reaction to Chet HaEgel, that means, if not for Chet HaEgel, every Jewish home would have been Hashem's home, would have been the Beis HaMikdash. And v'asuli Mikdash l'shchanti b'soicham, Lashon Rabim is very literal. Every Jewish home would have been Hashem's space. Because the Jewish people sinned and they brought into their lives Tumah and Misa and all the other not good things. Now Hashem says, if I can't live in your house because your house is not fit for a king, I need my own home. That's one approach. And the other approach is that Hashem was going to have his house whether or not we would do Chet HaEgel. Hashem wants a home just like you and I have a home. And of course, I'm not going to go into this now because I've discussed this many times in the past. The Beis HaMikdash is designed to reflect a human home. There's a bedroom, there's a living area, and there's a work area. We would call the work area a garage. In the times of the Shas, if you ever learned Masechta Bava Basra and other places, they called it a chutzner. And the chutzner was in front of the home. And the Beis HaMikdash was designed in that way. There was a big courtyard where they did heavy work, the karbanis. There was a living area where you had food and you had light and you had a pleasant smell. And then, of course, you have a place of privacy. This is the Kedusha Kedoshim. This is the bedroom. It's a private space. So the Beis HaMikdash was meant to look like the homes we live in, or to say it alternatively, the way we live our life is supposed to reflect how the Eibush lives in the Beis HaMikdash. What I want to talk to, at least for the beginning of tonight, is the two words Mishkan and Mikdash. Ask any person who's learned anything. The house of God that Moshe built is called, they'll say Mishkan. Ask any person, the house of God that King Solomon built, that Shlomo HaMelech built, or that Ezra built is called what? They'll say Mikdash. The Rambam, ironically, doesn't use the word Mishkan, he doesn't use the word Mikdash. He uses the word Beis HaBchira, a house of choice. And you could almost say that the Rambam come up with a third word because he wants to get around this whole question of Mishkan and Mikdash. So the house that Moshe built is called Mishkan. I think we could all agree to that. The house that Shlomo built and that Ezra built and Mashiach is going to build, or the Eibush is going to build, depending on the opinions, is called Mikdash. So the Gemara speaks to this. The Gemara says, Mishkan the Ikni Mikdash and Mikdash the Ikni Mishkan. Every house of God, whether it's called Mishkan, as Moshe Rabbeinu's house was called, or it's called Mikdash, as all the subsequent Batei Mikdash were called, they're both. The Mishkan is also a Mikdash, and the Mikdash is also a Mishkan. So first let me tell you the significance of this, okay? And this is really simple, but it's also very important to understand theologically, philosophically, spiritually, okay? The root of the word Mishkan is Schechina. And the root of the word Mikdash is Kedusha. Like we say in the morning, L'shem yichud kudsha brichu u'shchinte might as well be Beis HaMikdash u'Mishkan. L'shem yichud Kedusha and Schechina. Mikdash and Mishkan. These are two ideas. What's the difference? Schechina means to rest. Right? The first words of the first mimer that Rabbi said that Schechina is al shem sheshechenes u'mislabeshes. Schechina means to sit. The connotation of the word Mishkan is how Hashem sits in the Beis HaMikdash. The connotation of the word Kedusha, the meaning of the word Kedusha, Kedusha means holiness. But there's 101 proofs in Psukim and in Chazal and in Chasidus that the word Kedusha means Havdalah, removed, separated. Or to say it contextually, the word Kedusha means to hover. Like something which is directly above the ground but is sort of floating a little bit, that's the concept of Kedusha. So Mishkan and Mikdash are two levels of the presence of Hashem. There's a Beis HaMikdash, a special building that's built for the Eibishter. It's built with a lot of tahara, it's built with a lot of kedusha. And by the way, the words tahara and kedusha could also be Schechina and Kedusha. They're very similar. And this home is designed, by the Eibishter, by the Nevi'im, however it's prepared, with a lot of tahara and kedusha for Hashem to be able to live there. And of course, you know and I know you can't force Hashem to do anything. Hashem only moves in if He wishes. You have a very dramatic story in Chumash. Ha'aron feels humiliated. Moshe Rabbeinu embarrasses him. They do this whole ceremony. They invite the whole nation. And the Eibishter doesn't show up. And Aaron says to Moshe, that's the point? You want to embarrass him if you're making the egel? Every single Jew in the world has to see that the Eibishter doesn't want to rest in my house. And they go in and they daven and then the Schechina rests. And then the Kedusha rests on top of that. There's a similar story in Bayis Rishon. Shlomo Melech davens and davens and davens. And until he says, my father David, the Schechina and the Kedusha refused to move in. When Shlomo Melech Fari invokes the name of his father, Shlomo Melech built a Beis HaMikdash, but it's King David's house, it's David HaMelech's binyan, and then the Schechina and the Kedusha move in, whatever the particulars are. So Hashem moves into his house. And of course the Gemara says, and this is really interesting, Kishem shebo lirois, kach bo lireis, people came to the Beis HaMikdash. However you explain the experience, they saw G-dliness. They saw Schechina and they saw Kedusha. I don't think Schechina was a four-legged animal and Kedusha was a two-legged man. I think it's all mystical. But the Gemara says explicitly, the Gemara says beferish, that in the Beis HaMikdash it was not only leirois, it was lirois. They saw, they experienced, like a nevuah, like a ruach hakodesh, the presence of Hashem. In fact, in Chasidus it's written that experiencing Hashem inside the Beis HaMikdash is a higher level than nevuah. Nevuah is considered Ein Soif after the Tzimtzum, the presence of Hashem in the Beis HaMikdash for every person who showed up, man and woman and child, is Ein Soif before the Tzimtzum. But there's these two ideas, Schechina and Kedusha. Schechina means a level of godliness that really rests, that's really moved in, this is his house. And Kedusha is a level of godliness which hovers above it. You're not going to have any Kedusha without Schechina. The lower level of godliness sits, moves in, becomes part of the world of the Beis HaMikdash, then the Kedusha will hover a little bit. If you had to use words to illustrate this, let's say, for example, if you want to enjoy a tasty wine or you want to enjoy a good smell, you have to first have a good meal. If you don't eat food and you drink wine, you get drunk. If you're hungry and you have all the best smells in the world, that doesn't have any significance. So the wine and the odor, the Domem is more spiritual, it's more lofty, but it's only useful if there's first a foundational thing, a basic thing. And that's how you interface Schechina and Kedusha. Shechina's idea of Hashem that we can actually relate to, Kedusha's level of Hashem, which is above this, and its availability to us is through the medium of Schechina. And here's where the difference really comes in. What happens when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed? What happens when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed? So the Zohar says when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, quote, Kuchabrichu Salek L'Yelo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes away. He ascends. He disappears. He goes up higher and higher still. And for the Kabbalists keeping score at home, and of course you all Kabbalists, the double lashon Kuchabrichu Salek L'Yelo is explained that the Kedusha ascends to Ze'er Anpin and then it ascends to Arech Anpin, to Tika Kedusha. When the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, the Kedusha goes away. It disappears. It's like the Chazal is going to say in a couple of weeks' time. That when Moshe Rabbeinu broke the Luchos, the stones fell and the letters flew away. The Schechina falls and the Kedusha flies away. So when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, Kedusha disappears. You have no connection to it. Schechina, on the other hand, experiences what you and I call Galus HaSchechina. Schechina goes into Galus with us. So the Mishkan and Mikdash And the Gemara says Mishkan ikri Mikdash, Mikdash ikri Mishkan. Each one is really both, but there's two different ideas here. The Mishkan idea is how Hashem comes into our life in such a way that when we have tzaddis, He tzaddises with us. When we go into Galus, He goes into Galus with us. Kedusha is a higher level which is available through Schechina, and when the Schechina is not the way it's supposed to be, when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, Kedusha simply vanishes. It goes off. It disappears. Okay, and I want you to know something very powerful and important, in my humble opinion. I think it's true. According to the Tanya, in Igeres HaTshuva, the phenomena of tshuva, the idea that we can correct a wrong, is very deeply connected to the concept of the Schechina going into Galus. If the Schechina didn't go into Galus, there wouldn't be the same concept of tshuva. The Schechina goes into Galus, we mess it up, it goes to a bad place. So Schechina is in Galus, we mess it up, it goes to a bad place, but it's here. So we can take it back. That's what tshuva means, to take it back. If in Galus Hashem would disappear, what you don't have, you can't bring back. So there's a very strong link, I think, when you learn Igeres HaTshuva, between the concept of Galus HaShechina and the whole prospect, whole idea that a Yid can actually do tshuva and fix his ways and prolong his life and all the other things which Alter Rebbe discusses in Tanya. So here's the question. We already established that there's two words that both denote Hashem's presence in the world, Schechina and Kedusha, Mishkan and Mikdash. So why is Moshe Rabbeinu's house called Mishkan, and why is all the other houses of God called Mikdash? And I know that the Gemara says that both means both. Fact of the matter is, you ask any person, Moshe Rabbeinu built, the answer is Mishkan. Shlomo Melech built, Beis HaMikdash. How many people are going to know that the Rambam says, don't call it Beis HaMikdash, call it Beis HaBchira? I only know it because I'm a Lubavitcher. I would not know it otherwise, and the Rebbe Sichos makes such a big deal out of the Rambam's creation of a new term for the Beis HaMikdash, not Beis HaMishkan, not Beis HaMikdash, but Beis HaBchira. Okay, so the question is, in the final analysis, if the house of God is both a Mishkan and a Mikdash, a Schechina and a Kedusha, why is Moshe Rabbeinu's house called Mishkan and all the subsequent Mikdash called Mikdash? And the question is especially important because the Gemara says that everything Moshe Rabbeinu does is forever. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Moshe Rabbeinu's house was never destroyed. It was only buried. Ma'aseh Yedei Moshe Nitzchim. Whatever Moshe Rabbeinu does is eternal. It's forever. So if everything that Moshe Rabbeinu does is forever, shouldn't Moshe Rabbeinu's house be associated with the higher level? And the Batei Mikdash that are temporary, the Beis Mikdash is destroyed, the Kedusha goes away, they should be called Mishkan. And the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu should be called Mikdash. So this is my question. Why is the tabernacle, the mobile house of God, called Schechina, and the permanent house of God called Kedusha? Okay, now I'm making this up, okay? I didn't see this in any sefer. It's a question which has bothered me for a long time. I sat down this afternoon, to prepare notes for tonight's class. And I wrote down several thoughts, okay? I don't know if they're true or not, but we're going to have this conversation anyway, okay? Reason number one, and this is all b'derech efsher. Reason number one, why is Moshe Rabbeinu's house called Mishkan? Because it's temporary. Schechina is a lower level. The house that Moshe Rabbeinu built has a temporary Kedusha. The Kedusha is not as permanent. In other words, it wasn't even meant to be forever. Even though what Moshe does is forever, but the idea that Hashem is going to live there from the moment it was created, it was meant to be temporary. So we call it Mishkan to connote that this house, because it's a temporary place, the presence of Hashem that's there is the lower level. The higher level may be there also, but because it's temporary, we call it by a lesser name. The Bayis Rishon, the first Beis HaMikdash, could have been the last Beis HaMikdash, could have been the final Beis HaMikdash. Bayis Sheni could also have been the final Beis HaMikdash. So we give them a name that connotes something higher, something more permanent. And this is just a simple reason why you would call Moshe Rabbeinu was building Mishkan, and the subsequent Batei Mikdash, you would call them Mikdash. That's one answer. But then I have a second answer. Okay, and this answer is the other direction. Talk about levels. We'll talk about levels. Yeah, levels, higher levels, lower levels, more or less. One of the most important phenomena in life is reliability. I think we can all agree to that. One of the most important phenomena in life is reliability. You have a friend, yeah? So some friends can help you a lot. Some friends can help you less. Now, there may be a friend who can't help you as much, but you know one thing. He's never going to disappoint you. He's always going to be there. You can have another friend. He may be able to do much more for you, but you never know if he's going to show up or not. The difference between Schechina and Kedusha, the fact is, once the Schechina came into this world, it never left. The Schechina came into this world in the Mishkan. It never left. The Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. It doesn't go to heaven. It goes into Galus with us. Kedusha, maybe it's the higher level, and it hovers above the Schechina in the Beis HaMikdash. But when things are not going as planned, it disappears. So I'm giving you another way of looking at it. Schechina is lower than Kedusha, but Schechina never leaves. Schechina is an eternity. Schechina is forever. And because Schechina is forever, there's actually an advantage, there's a mile in the word Mishkan over the word Mikdash. Because the meaning of Mishkan means the house where Hashem sits, and He's not leaving. And if He can't be here, He's going to be someplace else, and so forth and so on. And I'm going to give you a Rambam as a proof to my point, okay? Again, I'm not expecting you to know this, but this is one of the things that's very famous in yeshivish circles. I know it because the Rebbe spoke about it, okay? There is a question. There is a big question. There's a great question, yeah? Yidden conquered Eretz Yisrael. They conquered Eretz Yisrael. Became a holy land. Then Eretz Yisrael was conquered from us. Does it continue to be a holy land or not? We conquered the land from the Goyim. We made it holy. Yeah? The holy land. That's a Kodesh. The Goyim conquered the land from us. Is it still holy? The expression in the Gemara is, and the Rambam is, Kedusha Rishoina. The first time we make Israel holy. Kitcha L'shaita or Kitcha L'yasad Lavi. Is it holy for the moment or is it holy forever? That's the question. And the halacha is Kedusha Rishoina is Kitcha L'shaita. When we made Eretz Yisrael holy the first time around, when we left, the Kedusha stopped. It's over. Kedusha Shniya, when the second Beis HaMikdash was built, we say Kedusha Shniya Kitcha L'shaita L'yasad Lavi. The holiness of Eretz Yisrael that we have today is not from Bayis Rishon, it's only from Bayis Sheni. What about the Beis HaMikdash? Yidden built the Beis HaMikdash, and then the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. Or Yerushalayim, as the Rambam says. Yeah? Do we say about Yerushalayim and the Beis HaMikdash, Kedusha Rishoina Kitcha L'shaita or Kitcha L'yasad Lavi? And the Rambam paskins, when it comes to the whole of Eretz Yisrael, when Yidden live there, it's holy. Yidden move out, the holiness goes away. When it comes to Yerushalayim, when it comes to the Beis HaMikdash, they're exactly the opposite. Yidden built the Beis HaMikdash, even when nobody lives there, the Kedusha never leaves. You know what the Lashon Rambam is? Schechina ain't a betela. That's Rambam's word. Schechina, he doesn't say Kedusha ain't a betela. He says Schechina ain't a betela. Because I believe what the Rambam is alluding to is Kedusha can come, Kedusha can go. Schechina is forever. The Schechina rested in Har HaMoriah. The Schechina which rested in Har HaMoriah, there's no Beis HaMikdash. So there's something called Galus Schechina, all kinds of situations. The Schechina never leaves. And I'm suggesting, that the reason we call Moshe Rabbeinu's house Mishkan is not because it's lower than the Beis HaMikdash, but because it represents the more important idea. Hashem came into this world, He's never leaving. He's never leaving. He can be in Galus, he can be entrapped, he can be concealed, he can even suffer. But that concept that Hashem comes into this world never leaving is not associated with the word Kedusha. You have to wait a few minutes. It's associated with the word Schechina. And I'm suggesting that we call Moshe Rabbeinu's house Mishkan because Schechina is a lower level, but it's a more reliable level. It's an eternal level. Kedusha is a higher level, but it can come and it can go. So the Beis HaMikdash we call Kedusha. Kedusha is a higher word than Schechina, but it's not as reliable. The house of Moshe Rabbeinu we call Mishkan. It's a lower word, but it connotes something permanent, something that's reliable, something that's here forever. Okay, I give you a minute. You're in the back. You had a question.
Yeah, after Rabbi, Haggadah refers to the Dayenu, refers to the Beis HaMikdash.
Correct, but what was that written? Okay, that's news to me, but okay. But your point is well taken. It's a very good point. The Rebbe actually has a sikhe where he wonders why in the Haggadah do we say Uban Alon is based on Bchira. And it's consistent with the Rambam. Go ahead. That was a very, very good observation, by the way.
In Amsterdam, speaks of the going up and coming. Shouldn't came to earth and went up each time, so then it comes
Okay, it's a fair point, but you have to remember, when was that? That was before Har Sinai. Before Har Sinai. Once the Torah was given, the Schechina never leaves. Point well taken. V'asur Mikdash means, even if you sin and you misbehave, I need a place because I'm not leaving. I told you in the beginning of the class, there's two ways to look at it. That it's a reaction to the ego, or it's notwithstanding ego or no ego. Right? If you go in the way that it's a reaction to the ego, Hashem says, I'm not leaving. So before Matan Torah, you were right. The Schechina came and left. After Matan Torah, the Schechina comes in, the Schechina never leaves. Okay? Now, Rabbi say, in light of what I just said, I want to go into another point, which is also axiomatic to our Parsha, very, very important, very basic and very obvious. But this is going to explain that the house of Moshe is called Mishkan because it's a lower level, and the house of Shlomo is called Mikdash because it's a higher or it's a deeper level. In other words, it's going back to the first idea that I suggested, that the Mishkan is called Mishkan, even though it's Ma'aseh de Moshe Nitzchi, because it's on a lower level than the Mikdash, even though it's not an Inyan Nitzchi. And this is discussed very clearly in the Rebbe's Sichos, Rebbe's talks. The Mishkan was built in the following way. Number one, they didn't use stone. They didn't use cheap material. They used very expensive material. The only place in the Beis HaMikdash where they used cheap material, and this is just, I'm pointing it out because I think it's important to know, was the Mizbeach was built hollow. The Mizbeach was made of copper. And it was hollow. And they would fill the Mizbeach with sand. When they traveled, they would fill the Mizbeach till the brim with sand. Now, officially, the Mizbeach had a deck of copper and wood. But I'm not sure exactly how that copper and wood was able to deal with the heat on the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach was filled with sand. And when they would leave, they would raise up the Mizbeach, and that pile of sand would lay there and become a sand dune to be blown in the wind and have no Kedusha whatsoever, even though for 18 years or 19 years there may have been literally the Mizbeach for the Eibishter. Besides for that, in the Mishkan, all the materials they used were expensive. The wood was very precious, and they used copper, silver, gold. That's it. The foundation of the Mishkan was silver. The walls of the Beis HaMikdash were made of wood covered in gold. And the roof of the Beis HaMikdash was basically animal skins. Right? It was either wool, or it was wool and linen, or it was made from the hair of goats, which I don't think is particularly... I don't know if people go out of the way to wear goat fur as an item of great luxury. And then on top, they literally had animal skins. Animal skins are very, very expensive. They literally took animal skins. They I don't know how to do it. It's called curation. You take the skin off the animal, you prepare it properly, it becomes durable, it becomes waterproof, it becomes very beautiful and soft, and they laid it on top, animal skins. So the Rebbe makes the observation. That means that the Mishkan was stacked. Domem on the bottom, Tzomach in the middle, Chai on the top. The foundation is silver. Silver is Domem. Domem literally means silent, doesn't say anything. The walls were made of wood, this is Tzomach, trees grow. And the roof was made from the fur, the wool, or the fur, or the hair, or the skins of animals, which is Chai. So the Mishkan was designed that the higher you went, the holier it was. The more elevated it was, and therefore the more holy it was. The Beis HaMikdash was made of stone, period. Made of rock. They didn't make it from wood brick, from cement, they made it from rock. Eretz Yisrael is blessed with rock. The Beis HaMikdash was made of rock. If they could afford it, they made it of marble. The Gemara says that Hurdas built the Beis HaMikdash, that from the distance looked like the waves of the ocean. It was very, very beautiful. They made it out of blue marble, which is apparently very expensive and very, very beautiful. When you would see the Beis HaMikdash from a distance, it seemed to you like a big, big wave, like a tsunami-like wave. It was gorgeous. Made of marble, made of stone. The halacha is, the Beis HaMikdash had no landscaping. Beis HaMikdash was beautiful. It was meant to be beautiful. But there wasn't a patch of grass to be found, just like Brooklyn. You see? That's why the devil lives in Brooklyn. You didn't know the real reason, yeah? There wasn't a patch of grass. There wasn't a shrub. There wasn't a flower. There wasn't a bush. There wasn't a tree gunish. The entire Beis HaMikdash was stone and marble. The floor, the walls, the ceiling. There was no living trees any place in the Beis HaMikdash. There were no gardens. There were nothing. Moreover, even wood that had been harvested, wood that had been cut, that was used in the framing, had to be covered by stone. There was not allowed to be any exposed wood. You were not allowed to see any eitz boilet in the Beis HaMikdash. There are two exceptions which are brought in Svarim. One was that they built a balcony for the women out of wood in Simchas Beis HaSheva. The other was that they built a platform for the Melech in the courtyard of the Azora, of the Azas Nashim, for Hakel. And of course, the question in those two cases was, I thought you're not allowed to have eitz boilet. It's brought in the first Perek of Beis HaBchira. And the answer which is brought is that both of those wood structures were temporary. They would take them down. They put the balcony up just for Sukkot. They took them down. They put the bima up for the Melech on Hakel, on Sukkot, and then they took it away. It was not permanent. So the Beis HaMikdash was really the opposite of the Mishkan. The Mishkan was made from higher levels of Hashem's world, minerals, plants, and even animals. And the minerals chosen were very sophisticated, very high. Gold, silver, and copper. The Rebbe spoke a number of times. But it's in the Mugi de Kesiche, in Tafshin and Beis, which is literally 4 weeks before the stroke, 2 weeks before the Teruma, Tzava, Kisisa, 3 weeks before the stroke. The Rebbe said, Zohav, Kesef, and Nechoshes is 3 levels. It's brought on the Kutasichas also in Chelik Vov. Zohav means Zeh HaNoisein body. Zohav is Rosh Tevis. Zeh HaNoisein body, one who gives, who's healthy and strong. Kesef is Kishayesh Sakonas Pachad. When you're afraid that something may happen not good, you're a little bit nervous, you give a donation to Tzedakah. And the Choshes is Nidvas Choyli Sha'omartnu. When a person's already sick, a person's already compromised, and he gives Tzedakah to heal himself. So Zav, Kesef, and the Choshes are meramis to people giving Tzedakah in 3 different levels. But it's not stone. Gold is not stone, silver is not stone, and even copper is not stone. They're far more beautiful and far more precious and so on. So the Mishkan was designed to be made from precious material, and the higher you went, the more precious the material was. The Beis HaMikdash was designed to be entirely from stone. So of course on the surface, the Beis HaMikdash was a cheaper house. They couldn't afford it. And by the way, parenthetically, this is a Maimer Amuzge, the halacha was that there was a chiyuv l'reimem as Beis Elokus, to make the fire as Beis Elokus, to make the Beis HaMikdash as beautiful as possible. When Yidden could afford it, they would gild the entire interior of the Beis HaMikdash with gold plates. And then, of course, every few generations, somebody would come, plunder the Beis HaMikdash, and take those golden plates off into wherever it was, Sheshak Melech Mitzrayim, and so on. Then they'd get rich again. They'd use gold plates in the interior of the Beis HaMikdash. But it was all diamond. There were no plants, there were no animals, as a part of the design. So Chassidus, of course, explains that the reason for this is because the Mishkan can only bring Kedusha, or let's use the word that we used earlier, the Mishkan can only bring the Schechina to things which are closer to holiness. The lowest thing in the world is earth, is stone. Holiness cannot be brought all the way to stone. So the Mishkan was made from metals, gold, silver, and copper, and then wood, and then animal products. The Beis HaMikdash allows for the Eibishter to come down to a much, much, much lower level. In other words, the fact that the Beis HaMikdash is made entirely of stone is not because they couldn't afford the gold necessary to build it, but because the whole idea of the Beis HaMikdash is that you're bringing the Eibishter to an even lower level. Or to say it in other words, the Beis HaMikdash is the idea that the Schechina is coming down even lower. That the Schechina is coming down not just to material, which is closer to life, but it's coming down to material, which is the greatest, the maximum distance from life, which is the idea of stone. So this is an interesting interface, or a little bit sort of an interesting contradiction. And this is another reason, by the way, why you could say that Moshe Rabbeinu's house is called Mishkan, and the house of Shlomo Melech built is called Mikdash, because since the Mishkan was built in such a way that suggests Hashem comes down into this world, but he only comes till here, he doesn't come all the way down to the lowest level. So his presence in this world can be seen as less. That's the reason why you would call the Moshe Rabbeinu's house, in a negative way, Mishkan. In the Beis HaMikdash, the idea that the entire structure is built from stone indicates that the Eibishter's holiness can come down even to the lowest level. And this would argue in a positive way why you would call it Mikdash, to indicate that the highest level of holiness can be brought down to the lowest level. In short, what I did tonight was I asked a simple question. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu's house called Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash called Mikdash, even though the Gemara says both are both? I gave you some answers putting an advantage on the Mishkan over the Beis HaMikdash, and other answers in putting an advantage in the Beis HaMikdash over the Mishkan. And of course, what's most important to us is the pasuk that says, "V'asulim mikdash v'shochanti b'soicham." When we have in our life a little holiness, that's it. V'asulim mikdash. Bring into your life a little holiness. V'shochanti b'soicham. My Schechina will move into your home. And in light of what I said before, we'll translate it: bring into your house a little holiness. V'shochanti b'soicham means my Schechina will move in, and once the Schechina moves into a home, he never ever leaves. Okay, let's daven Ma'ariv.